Welcome to Dads and Dollars podcast with your host, Stanley Funches, certified financial planner, business owner, author, speaker, and father of three. Listen as Stanley shares his valuable insights around fatherhood and finances gained from over 20 plus years of experience. You'll hear stories, lessons learned, and the ups and downs he and his guests have encountered on their journeys as fathers, professionals, and business owners. These shared lessons will help provide you a path for financial independence while celebrating the challenges of being a dad. Thank you for joining the conversation. Here's your host, Stanley Funches.
Good day. Welcome to Dads and Dollars, the podcast where fatherhood and finances are woven into many life topics. My name is Stanley Funches, and I'm a certified financial planner by profession and a father of three in this thing called life. We are glad you can join us for season 1 and episode 23. And in this episode is springtime. So we're going to talk a little real estate, buying a home, selling a home, even purchasing investment property. Looking forward to the conversation, so let's get started. All right, everyone, we want to welcome Charles Perlis to the podcast. Charles, welcome.
What's up, everybody? How's it going?
Well, look, Charles is a real estate agent with Bradley Perlis Group of LAH here in Birmingham, Homewood area. And he's a proud husband of Abby Perlis and father of 3 wonderful kids. So we're glad you can join us today, buddy.
Dude, I really appreciate you letting me on, man. I've been looking forward to this. I've been watching some episodes, so I appreciate you.
Hey, man, look, one of the things when I started the podcast, I did think about you, and I always think about the first time we met and the story that you were telling me about, your father, putting you guys, his kids through college and how you wanted to make sure you took care of your finances and built off what he did with you. So, the podcast being Dads and Dollars, kind of tell us a little bit about your thoughts there and your story there.
So I graduated from college with a marketing degree in 2005, and I started working in real estate in June of 2005, right after graduation. And I had made a little bit of money, and business was finally starting to roll in after a start. And I had a little bit of money in probably March or April of 2006. I knew I'd probably be getting engaged soon. And this was actually that long ago where I found Stanley in the yellow pages. He was with Lincoln Financial. And I was like, I've heard of Lincoln Financial. I've heard of that. I want to start saving some money. And in my world, we're not given any type of 401k or any type of company match with our company. I'm a true independent contractor. So a lot of people make the mistake of making money and forgetting to save. So I was 23 and I was like, I guess I should figure out what saving means. I was clueless. So I literally called Lincoln Financial. They had some guy named Stanley Funches who I'd never heard of in my life. They said he can see you on Monday or Tuesday or whatever it was. So I came in there a week later and I've been with him ever since.
Yeah, man, that was a long time ago, buddy.
That was 17 years ago.
Long time ago. Hey, so you're in the real estate industry, and we've talked about this before. I mean, I think you guys are kind of the pulse of the economy in a lot of ways. And so you mentioned that you started in real estate back in 2006. What got you started there?
So my dad came to Birmingham as the head of the English department for UAB. He was an English professor. He had 5 kids. I'm in the middle. And in 1986 or 7, he realized he needed more money because he wasn't getting paid enough on a teacher's salary. So he started selling real estate on the side. So he quit teaching full time in 1988 to pursue a full-time career in real estate. So I was raised around it. So I had a background in it. So it's something that I kind of felt comfortable getting into.
Oh, well, yeah. So you've been around real estate for most of your life.
All I can remember, more or less.
So explain, look, I mean, everybody talks about real estate agents and real estate and buying homes. Kind of explain to us, what does a real estate agent do for the buyer or seller? And what's the value of having a real estate agent?
Okay, so that's a fantastic question. And I'm not going to say anything that would discourage anybody getting started in the business because we all have to start somewhere. But the one thing I would tell you that I would not have given you the same answer that I'm going to give you now when I was in my 20s is that experience I had an interesting experience the other day. It was actually Friday, right before I was heading out of town. And I went back on some deals that I'd put together in the past. And just to recall on certain situations you've been part of, which really can only happen over time. So this is my 19th year. Just having that bank of knowledge to fall back on is of the utmost important because you see unique things every day in this business.
Yeah, give us an example of one of those unique things.
Okay, that's a great. So it's market to market, and the biggest thing that I would tell you is having sold real estate in different types of markets. I think people oftentimes can be prisoners of the moment and think the market's always going to be a certain way. Oh my gosh, but markets shift, and when they think, oh my gosh, I might not sell my house, there's always hope. As you're telling me, similar to the stock market, it's important not to get caught up in the moment. Now, having said that, you've also got to give advice based on current market conditions. So while there's no crystal ball in real estate, even though every client I've ever had that buys a house will always ask me, hey, what do you think my house is going to be worth XX years from now? One thing I can say is over time, similar to stocks, is real estate has a long-term history of going up. So that's kind of an important thing to always remind the consumer.
Yeah, yeah. And so we talk about current conditions. I mean, I know a lot of people, maybe listen to the podcast and they're thinking of going and buy a home, they're thinking of going and sell a home. And I know sometimes it's regional based too, but what you're seeing in your area, I mean, is this different this time? I mean, people always say it's different this time. Do you feel
So
like it's
that's the
different?
question. So there's two ways to go about that. The biggest problem that we ran into last year is what everybody started saying, are we in '08 again? What's going on? This feels like '08. And again, I'll stop comparing it to stock so much, but it was similar vibe. And it was not. I mean, whole different world back then. I remember it very well. We were selling everything we could get our hands on '06, '07, and about summer of '08, all of a sudden the phone stopped ringing. And this was just not how this is. I mean, people overreacted a little bit to the interest rates going up, which they should. I mean, I know nobody wants to pay a higher interest rate, but the reality is because there's no inventory in this market. Now, I just study really the Birmingham area market. I'm not a huge study of the international trends because I only have to give advice to Birmingham clients. But um, there was a little bit of an overreaction, but really all things have done is continue to trend upward. If you were looking for a deal, the deal's just not going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah, so because of lack of inventory, it's the old supply demand thing, right? So there's not great supply. People still want to buy houses. I guess rental prices have gone up. So people are trying to find best places to put their money or live. So you still have a level of demand, but you just don't have the supply. And so
That's
that means
correct.
prices are still holding steady.
So prices are not only holding steady, just based on what I've seen through the spring. We're still early in the year, but spring, we're right in peak market. Mid-April through June 1st is kind of the peak market from a, historical standpoint. So most of the properties in good areas are still getting multiple offers, way over list price. And if anything, I feel like we're probably up 3 to 4% price wise from this time last year. So, I mean, I think what everybody kind of hopes is more of stability in the marketplace. Let's get to where prices are going up 3 to 5% per year. Interest rates start coming down in that 4 to 5% range. And I feel like that's a sweet spot market.
Yeah. So if I'm looking to buy a home right now, give me one nugget of information that you don't have to give me the whole book. I know that you get paid to help people in different markets, but give me one nugget of information. If I say, hey, I'm looking to buy a home right now for me and my family, what would you tell me?
So that's a question that I get quite frequently. So the best thing that I can tell you is don't ever sacrifice location. I think too many people get caught up trying to find a better value in an area where they don't necessarily want to live. If there's a place where you want to live, or a certain part of town, wherever that might be, where your family is, or you're going to get in for a school system, don't ever sacrifice location. You can always change your house over time, maybe as income grows over the next 5, 7 years, but you can't change where your house is. I think that's something that holds true.
Okay, so the old real estate thing, location, location, location. I mean, so
Yeah.
that matters even when you're looking to buy somewhere.
Well, it's just like you can certainly gamble. There's been some areas, parts of town where I've seen tremendous growth that was maybe unforeseen. parts of Birmingham, like the Avondale area, that property value has literally doubled in the last 8 years. So I always tell people, like young people, like if you're willing to maybe gamble a little bit more open to some risk, and because maybe you've gotten priced out of certain markets where you wanted to be, one thing that really is good to have a good buyer's agent that can recommend areas that maybe where prices aren't way high yet, but where you foresee maybe some boom happening. That's something, but it depends. If you're older or you don't want to go through some type of, maybe risk averse situation, then buy somewhere that's already established.
Yeah. So when I'm hearing you as a buyer's agent, one of the things that can help you is to locate, find locations. So if your ideal spot is uncomfortable for you in your price range, then they're able to help you determine where a male alternative location would be that would be similar quality.
That's 100%. What we've seen, I think Birmingham is undergoing, I've been here most of my life, all my adult life, is growing faster than a lot of people realize. So a lot of the more established areas are pricing younger buyers out of the marketplace. So there is value in certain up and coming parts of town, where it really does come in handy to have a good buyer's agent who can guide you through that.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Good stuff. All right. So now let's flip it. I'm selling my house, and I don't know where I'm moving yet, but I just know I want to sell. I may downsize if I'm retiring, or I may be moving to another city, relocating. But I'm coming to you and saying, "Hey, I need to sell my home here." What would you say then? Give me one thing that you would.
So I would tell you this is the best seller's market I've ever seen in my life. It still is. Despite, if you've seen some negativity in the news, I'm telling you, I have not really seen it translate specifically to Birmingham. It's a fantastic time to sell. On the converse side, the question that I'm constantly having with people is, okay, well, what if I've got to buy back? Do I have to spend a high price to get back into the market? And it's situational is all I can tell you. It's a great time for downsizers. Maybe you've had a house that your family grew up in, you bought it in 2002, your youngest daughter just went off to college, and you don't necessarily need a school system anymore. I think there's great opportunity for downsizers to, in that 50 to 60 type of age, to get a big chunk of equity out of their house. Maybe buy a lake house with it, maybe buy some type of vacation home. So I think there's massive opportunity in that demographic. But for some people, it's a better time to potentially hold your house. If you're already in a school system, you don't need to move. It might be a good time just to stay put for a little bit. And that's why you're seeing this inventory shortage, is a lot of people that don't have to move are not moving right now.
Yeah. So if I'm trying to sell my house right now, do you have like maybe one thing that you would say, hey, you need to consider doing this through the process? Do you need to consider? I mean, I know that some people say, hey, you redo your kitchen or you do your landscape. I mean, those are very simplistic things. I'm coming from a financial planner's mind, but from a real estate agent's mind, do you give them one thing to look at?
So, the old rule of thumb is kitchens and master bathrooms are the best place to put your money, from a resale standpoint. If you can, and I would say I'd throw in a third would be exterior. Make sure you've cleaned up the exterior of your house, any like wood rot, a fresh paint, anything like that to distinguish your house from other houses in the neighborhood. But you can't ever go wrong doing kitchens and master baths. It's a great place to put your money.
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned something just a few minutes ago about lack of inventory and sellers maybe waiting. Do you think that less people are going to sell in the future who got those 2% rates? That probably the only people are going to sell are the people who have to relocate or maybe downsize? Or do you think people are going to hold in their houses a lot longer because
So that's
they
what
maybe
we're seeing
2%?
now. But the reason I think that's a great question is again, there's no crystal ball in this room, I can promise you. But I feel like a lot of people I trust in the mortgage business thinks over the next year we'll get rates back down of 5.5%. And I may eat my words for saying that. But if we get to a market like that, people I feel like have short-term memory. They say, "Oh, I don't want to change out of this," but inevitably life changes do happen. Families grow. People need to get into school systems. People need different things out of their house, whether it be, okay, I've got another kid driving. I need a garage. I need a finished basement. I need my kids to get away from me. So inevitably there will always be a need for people to buy and sell a house. It's just like I said, people always shock a little bit when there's big market news that comes out, and it was a shock to the system with the interest rates. But as things stabilize, I think business will start returning to normal, as they say.
Yeah, yeah. So when people, especially young people, when they're going out buying a home, what are some of the mistakes that you've seen people make? Because we want people to avoid those mistakes, common mistakes. What are some of those, common mistakes you've seen? I
So
know you mentioned location was one thing.
Oh yeah, and again, that's first and foremost. Don't there's some houses that we'll even call this. You need an out of towner to buy this, or this kind of a sucker house, like something that was maybe whether it's a certain part of an area that is not as desirable as some other part. So don't fall victim to that one house that, oh my gosh, maybe I should. It's been sitting on the market 300 days, but maybe I should give it a go. So be careful there. But the biggest mistake I see is a lot of first time home buyers try to do it on their own without a buyer's agent. And I want to make sure, first and foremost, in 95% plus of real estate transaction, the seller pays the real estate commission. So a buyer's agent to a buyer is a completely free service. So if you've got somebody that gives you good sound advice, a lot of people mistake, oh, what am I going to have to pay you? It's actually completely free. So to not take somebody up on that offer, to me, will never make sense. So that would be first and foremost, is get a good agent that knows the areas that you want to be. That's the second part of it. Agents are all cut from a different cloth. A lot of people specialize in certain areas. So focus on making sure you have an agent that's familiar with the areas that you're targeting.
Yeah, areas and probably price point too, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
because some agents might be familiar with the area, but they don't usually deal with the homes that are in various price points. Would that be fair?
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because I mean, if you, especially as competitive as today's marketplace is, it's not uncommon in a lot of the better locations to have 5, 6, 7, 8 offers on properties. So make sure that agent knows the property that you're buying and doesn't let you be, somebody that grossly overpays through a multiple offer situation. So that you also have to kind of keep your clients in line sometimes from that perspective.
So it's an emotional thing too. They come in, they see the house, they fall in love with it, and you don't want to overpay by just okay, I'll pay whatever because I love the house.
Yeah. So I
It's almost
mean,
like buying a car in a way.
it is. And people get intoxicated when they see 5 or 6 other people looking at the house the same time they're looking at it. They see groups of people standing with a realtor in the front yard strategizing. They see inspectors over there inspecting the house already. So it's that human nature of when they see somebody else wanting something, they also want it. So, and the adverse is true. It's funny as this market's shifting, people are now saying, well, why is this house still sitting on the market 3 or 4 days? And I usually joke back, I'll say, because you haven't bought it yet. So sometimes don't be the person that finds a house you love and doesn't buy it because there's not somebody else that wants to buy it, because it makes no sense. And there's probably some of that going on as well right now.
Okay, well that's those are all great things to know. Now, so the opposite side of this and is the seller, right? So the seller does pay, and the value, we kind of talked about some of the things from a value standpoint. What does that process look like? So educates people on the buyer's agent, seller's agent, who pays what, who gives what advice, who represents whom, kind of help people with that.
So that's a great question. It's something that I take for granted that, oh, well, you would know that. Everybody, and then when people ask questions, so I always tell people, listen, there's no dumb questions because I've been asked every question. So just there's no dumb question. Ask whatever. But essentially, in the vast majority of real estate transactions, there's a buyer's agent and a seller's agent. And when they sell a property together, it's called a co-op sale, a cooperative sale. So they're working together. Typically, most transactions, you have a great working relationship with that agent. You're handling different duties through the transaction to make sure it closes. And then you split the commission at the closing 50-50 with the other agent. So that's how it works.
Okay. All right. And so, I mean, I don't know the answer to this question, so you got to help me. But I've heard at times that you have to be careful. Like if it's one agent, they might represent two sides of or one side of the transaction. How does that work? I mean, I don't even know if the question is clear, but you probably can clear it up.
So that's a great question. All right. So when you represent both parties, as opposed to it be calling a co-op, it's called a MEOP. That's the term it's always been. It hasn't really phased out yet, but that's the term we use, a MEOP. So it happens probably 15% ish of transactions. Different areas can vary. A lot of that's going to depend on, does that agent have enough experience to where they know how to manage both sides? And one thing, again, going back to the mistake I said, a lot of young people will come into a house, go straight to the listing agent, thinking they can get a better deal or some type of inside deal. And I can promise you, if it's somebody that's been around for a while, they're not going to fall for that, because it's just not conducive to the seller that they're already representing. So more often than not, you're better off having your own representation that's just looking out for your interests. Now, likewise, I do have clients that I've been working with from a buyer's perspective that I know will have interests in my listings. And the best way to do it is just to be upfront with them, let them know, hey, I'm also representing the seller in this transaction. I can't give any information that could potentially compromise the other party. And lots of agents have been around for a while, have experience doing that, and are very good at it. And it's something that I feel very comfortable doing, because inevitably you will have a buyer for your listing.
Yeah. So if you're a buyer and your agent has access to some inventory, which is key right now, right? You want to be able to find
Sure.
good inventory. And so if your agent has, then you have to really realize that agent also is working for that seller, and there's some barriers there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And what I will typically tell people, let's say I've got a buyer that I know is looking for, a $700,000 house in this neighborhood somewhere in Birmingham, and I've got a listing coming up that fits their needs. What you'll tell your buyer is, I have a responsibility. I've advised this seller, they need to go on the open market, because right now, if you don't go on the open market, I feel like you're making a huge mistake, because you're losing out on the potential for multiple offers. And some sellers will fall into that trap of, hey, my agent told me, somebody just brought me a buyer. It's not even on the market yet. And it depends what your situation is. If you're somebody who does not want people storming through your house, or you have a family situation or something like that, there are moments where, let's take an off market deal. Let's make it easy. But right now, I feel like good listing agents are really strongly advising their clients to take your house to market.
Oh man, yeah. So good stuff. All right, so you're an entrepreneur as well. I mean, so you're a business owner, entrepreneur. You have your own real estate, all this stuff. So give some advice to entrepreneurs. And well, let's do this first. Let's talk about owning your own real estate investment properties. That's quite different than owning your personal residence.
Sure.
What are a couple of things that you would speak on, pros and cons of owning your own investment property?
That's a fantastic question. So I actually dabble a little bit in that. I've got 2 investment properties that I rent out to tenants. I work with a bunch of people that buy investment property. I've got one client that buys typically 1, sometimes 2 a year with me. I've been selling him houses for several years, and now he has a book of about between 10 and 12 properties in the areas where he's targeted. It can be a great way to make money long term. I feel like it's a very safe place to put your money. It depends. There's 2 different thoughts. You can gamble on a neighborhood that maybe you think 15 years down the road is going to, maybe a school system is getting annexed or something like that has potential for a huge growth. Or you can, typically, going back to the location thing, buy them in more established neighborhoods, because there's a long-term history of them going up. It's like buying the blue chip stocks versus the growth stocks. But I've seen people make tremendous amounts of money. I mean, I've seen people come to closings, where they bought the property 20 years ago, and now they're selling it for, X amount more than what they'd purchased the property for. So it's a great way to harvest your money, if you're looking to do something on the side. So a lot of people will do it on the side.
Yeah. Any tip? Is that location for rental properties as well? Is that the main tip, or is another?
I've got this one guy. He only will buy a property that he thinks the lot will be worth value as a tear down. So what that means is he's only buying properties in areas that he thinks the next buyer could just mow the house down and build new. And the reason is he doesn't want to maintain his properties. So he's okay letting them, I don't want to say fall apart, so to speak. But he's comfortable with the idea of, okay, I don't have to invest a ton of money in infrastructure keeping this up, because ultimately I'm just going to be selling it at dirt value. Now there's other people that's not the case. So it kind of depends on what your cup of tea is.
Oh yeah, that's a very interesting strategy. So really, you just just buying the lot, so to speak, right?
Sure. Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, but you do have people that will buy housing or duplexes and triplexes, then they can rent out to multiple amounts of people. So it depends on like stocks and bonds. Some are more like a bond that have dividend type payouts. Some you can maybe gamble on where you're riding up that land value like a stock would rapidly appreciate. So again, it depends on a lot of people where they are in life. Um, can if you're younger, maybe like I said with stocks, you can do something a little bit more growth oriented.
so when you're looking at going into investment property, figure out what it is that you want. Like you can go to the category of, like you said, with your someone else that you know that buying a lot, trying to get the value, kind of get the just the dirt to stay the same. You can go and buy multiple properties, duplexes or whatever, so you can get larger income streams, or you could go and just hope for appreciation in the neighborhood or area. So there's different ways of thinking out about it. It's not just investment property alone, correct?
100%. And then there's plenty of good realtors out there that have vast experience of working with investors. So in a situation like that, find somebody that has experience working with investors. The
Awesome,
taxes
awesome.
shake out different. There's lots of little nuances that are much different than just buying a home as your own home.
Yeah, great piece of advice. Great piece of advice. Now, so we mentioned earlier, um, fatherhood. This is Dads and Dollars. So just kind of tell us a little bit about Charles the dad.
Man, Charles the dad it learns every day, really, from my kids. I mean, you're learning something new about your kids every day. I'm fortunate to have a 14-year-old son, a 12-year-old daughter, and a 9-year-old son. Um, so I'm kind of through the spectrum. I've changed a lot from when my 14-year-old was 9 versus my 9-year-old. Um, so I mean, fatherhood's the best part of life, man. And this whole real estate thing is all to do what I got to do to, help them get to a place where hopefully they can find success and find something that they have fun doing.
Man, you got a teenager.
Got a
Look,
teenager.
every day I realize how much older I'm getting. Charles Perlis has a teenager.
I know. I know. I feel you, man. I didn't have kids when I met you, buddy.
I know that. I
I wasn't
know that.
even married.
All right, so how is being a dad for you today is different than what you thought it would be as a child, or different than even like what you may have experienced with your own father?
Yeah. So I mean, I was thinking about this actually today. I mean, I think that the reason you love your kids so much, which you don't realize before you're a parent, you think of things like, oh, I can't wait to do this. I'm like, yeah, I can't do it. But they really are a piece of you. They're an extension of you, you know. So it's really cool just to have kind of another, appendage, so to speak, of yourself that you can live through. You can live through their experiences. You can have fun watching them have fun. You can really have a wonderful experience in just watching them do something that they love. I'm fortunate enough to be heavily involved coaching my kids in various sports. They're all three very athletic. And that's something that I'm just very grateful for. I'm a big sports guy. So just watching them compete. And that's the other thing that I've learned. Just you take it so seriously the first time you go through things, coaching them. But now going back through it with my youngest son, I mean, you realize how much things change as they get old. And, it's not the end of the world when they're 8, 9, 10 years old. You got to have perspective. So I'm grateful for the perspective that I've gained.
Yeah, yeah. So, I was going to ask you how has things changed through the years for you as a dad? So with 3 kids, I mean, I have 3 as well. My daughter kids all the time about that we were much harder on her than we were the youngest. Do you experience that same, or you see that coming for you as well?
The biggest thing I see with my youngest, and I love him, is just that when they say, there's the baby in the family, that they really do mean that because like, he's not afraid to bark orders from the couch. We'll be cooking dinner, my wife will be cooking something. I mean, he's barking orders over there on the couch. And I think it's just the baby kind of has that mentality of, I'm the baby because that's kind of how they have evolved, through growing up. And my first one, I'm probably a little more stern on him. Like, take out the trash. Okay? I'm not going to ask you again. And you do have kind of that mentality of how you view them in the pecking order. And then
Yeah.
my daughter, she's just extremely responsible and she's the perfect middle child. She just does what she's got to do. Never
It's,
have told her once to go do her homework. Never.
it's just funny how that happens, man.
Oh yeah.
Look, I'm a big birth order guy. I studied psychology for a little while. That birth order fascinates me.
Yeah.
Um, so what would with a 14-year-old and having the age spans and three kids and being a father and a husband, how do you balance all of this?
I mean, I'm fortunate really that I'm married, a person that's perfect for me. She lets me do what I want to do that makes me happy. I let her do. So it really bleeds into our relationship with the kids. So I mean, try not to take things too serious, honestly. I mean, really. I mean, you can look at things one way and get worked up if you want, but you can also, again, through experience. I'm a big experience guy, not just in real estate and life. And you can harken back to different times in your life and say, wait a second, hold on. This is maybe not as big a deal as I'm making it. Because I think people just have a tendency to just blow the littlest of things up. So I mean, I think just learning perspective as we age is one of the most valuable things that we can achieve.
Oh man, I think that's a good piece of advice right there. I mean, look, tomorrow will come. Tomorrow the sun will still rise. So things may come up that may be a challenge, but to just moving forward and staying positive, I think that's a good piece of advice.
Oh yeah. And it's the same like, you're starting in real estate or whatever. I mean, you're like, I got no business and what's going on? There's so many ways that, stay patient. And that's, from a kid perspective, where I see it is when you see, those, maybe the younger parents going through it the first time with a kid, whether it's through a sport, they're 8, 9 years old, freaking out. Oh my God, what's going on? Just chill. Like, I mean, just so that having that perspective from my 14-year-old son to my 9-year-old son, that's been an interesting thing.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned that is a constant learning experience being a dad. It's constant learning. Any large learnings that you can think of other than just kind of being patient and not taking it all too seriously? Any other large learnings or any new learnings that you've had as a dad?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest thing that kids want to hear is positivity. Just really encourage and be positive. I think, I go back to just coaching youth kids as well. Where I've changed is just kids thrive off positivity. It just I'm fortunate. My dad was, I don't know if he ever said a mean word to me. That's the type of dad that I was fortunate enough to have. I'm sure I've been a little meaner to my kids, quite frankly. Sometimes I've raised my voice, wish I hadn't, but truthfully, just build their confidence. I think that's the best thing that I try to do. Tell them how much, you love them and how proud you are of them.
Well, look, we want to be on-time parents, but we can't always be perfect parents. So, I mean, I'm sure that the kids will survive. You had to raise your voice at them a little bit here or there.
Yeah, they will. Sometimes they need, yeah, hey, sometimes there's no choice.
Well, hey, man, that's good stuff. So, one of the things you mentioned, and everybody can go back and listen to episode 22. We talked about we had an article about 13 ways of or things to do to raise a successful child. And one of the things you just mentioned, which the author of that article talked about, was always being positive. Like if you had to lean on something, lean on positivity. So that was a great piece of advice. You reinforced our episode 22 with that.
There you go.
So all right. So as we look to wrap up here, uh, three things as a business owner, family man, uh, someone who's looking to get in your profession. If you had just a few things that you would say, hey, just look at these things, follow these things, think about these things as you go through life. Kind of give me three off the top of your head.
All right. Be able to have a good feel for the room. That's what I always tell people, have enough self-awareness to know if maybe, especially if you're going to be in sales. I think that is the best advice in any type of sales. I mean, I know people say being a people person, and I get that. That is being a people person, but everybody's got different personality traits, and you can't handle every client you have the same way. You can't be robotic. You can't just say, this is my approach to real estate. I even tell, there'll be times where I'm showing houses. I'll show the same house to one person. I'll say, this house is not for you. I'll show it to the next person and say, this house makes a lot of sense for you, because people have different needs. So I even give different advice on the same house to different clients. So I know that seems a little funky, But again, it goes back to people have different personality traits. And that's, I feel like, been the key to my success, is recognizing a person's personality and trying to cater my approach to that person. So I think that's probably number one. And number two is have fun with it, because, like, going back to my point, my younger self would have been too hard on myself. If I lost a transaction, I would have been like, what could I have done differently? That's hindsight's always 2020. And again, go back to one of the first things I said, experience. All those lessons you learn, experience, and it makes you better. You can say, wait a second, I remember this. Here's what we should do. So just that side of it to me is huge. And then, so, don't beat yourself up as you're growing. That would be my number two. And then number three would just be, it is a cliche. And there are times where we do have to raise our voice, but just be cool to people, be cool with them. Whether you're playing golf with your buddies, I play a lot of golf, a lot of tennis. Everybody screws up. Sometimes you see people lose friends over stupid things. Just be cool with people, have fun.
Hey, man, look, I think all of those are great pieces of advice, and you're one of the coolest guys I know. Glad I've met you. Thank you for helping us and joining the podcast and sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, I thought of a memory of you earlier today. I don't remember when it was. I think I was real cool. I got my new Tesla or something. I said, come hop on a ride or something. And we drove around looking at property one day, and I was like, hey, there's this, and this. So I've even taken you in the car, man.
Yeah, man. Look, that's a nice. That's the first time I've ever been in a Tesla. So that was the first time I had ever been in one. So
there you go. My honor.
Yeah. Hey, but thank you, Charles, for joining us. Thank you guys for joining us on this episode of Dads and Dollars. If you would, rate us, review us. We really want those 5 stars. So we will talk to you next time.
All right. Peace out. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Dads and Dollars. If you found the information shared today valuable, please share with your friends and family via your social media. If you have a request for a future financial topic for Dads and Dollars, please email us at ask@dadsanddollars.com. For further information on your financial journey, you may purchase The Quest for Financial Independence, 10 areas of your financial planning you should not ignore, by visiting our website, dadsanddollars.com. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Individual tax and legal matters should be discussed with your tax or legal professional. Economic forecasts set forth may not develop as predicted, and there can be no guarantee that strategies promoted will be successful. All performance reference is historical and is no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Traditional IRA account owners have considerations to make before performing a Roth IRA conversion. These primarily include income tax consequences on the converted amount in the year of conversion, withdrawal limitations from a Roth IRA, and income limitations for future contributions to a Roth IRA. In addition, if you are required to make a required minimum distribution, RMD, in the year you convert, you must do so before converting to a Roth IRA. Asset allocation does not ensure a profit or protect against a loss. There is no assurance that the techniques and strategies discussed are suitable for all investors or will yield positive outcomes. The purchase of certain securities may be required to affect some of these strategies. Investing involves risk, including possible loss of principal. Guests and their companies are not affiliated with or endorsed by LPL Financial or Intellis Advisory Group. Securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services offered through Intellis Advisory Group, a registered investment advisor. Intellis Advisory Group and Intellis Wealth Management are separate entities from LPL Financial.